Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Adams Teachers and Inspector Calls. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Eric Birling. We're going to be considering a couple of different interpretations, whether Priestley wants us to view him positively as a man who made mistakes but is full of remorse, or negatively as a man who is incapable of taking responsibility for his actions. So let's get started. Let's start off by thinking about who Eric is in the play and what he represents. So Eric is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Birling, Sheila's brother, and he's the one that certainly gets himself into quite a pickle in the play. He is the person who impregnates Eva Smith, he steals from his father, he's quite a questionable character. And for that reason, there's quite a bit of ambiguity about who he stands for, who he represents, sort of metaphorically. Some people say that he, like Sheila, is a representation of the promise that comes with the younger generation and their capacity for change. And part of this is because he does seem to be quite remorseful for his actions. He certainly admits to his actions, and he has a lot of anger towards his parents for their inflexibility and the way that they seem to be burying their heads still at the end. So some people think, just like his sister, just like Sheila, they think that Priestley is using him as a kind of symbol of hope, a way of presenting the socialist ideology that Priestley upheld, and that's Eric. Yeah, bad guy, but comes good at the end. Or it's not quite so nice as that. You can also read him in quite a pessimistic way, which is one of the things that we're going to explore in this video. He is able to say that things should change, but there is a kind of feeling of how realistic is that? And has he, although he might have admitted actions, has he actually taken full responsibility? And if he hasn't taken full responsibility, then can he actually be a part of this force for good in the future? Well, let's go through some ideas, and then at the end of the video, you can make up your mind, and feel free just to send me a message and let me know what you think in the comments. Sorry, Priestley capitalist fears is this the pessimistic future ahead of us. Okay, so if we look at the way that he's described right from word go, so this is the early stage directions. He's in his early 20s, he's not quite at ease, he's half shy, half assertive. I've underlined that bit for you because that's quite a quotable quote, if you see what I mean. So this version of Eric, again, it points to the ambiguity that is going to run all the way through the play. He's a man of two halves. He's both shy and assertive. Well, that's juxtaposition. Those are two opposing things. So it suggests to us that Eric hasn't quite worked out who he is yet. He wants to stand up for what he believes in, but he doesn't quite manage it. And part of that could be because of the relationship he seems to have with his father, where he is overruled and certainly under the shadow of his father, he's not taken seriously at all. So if you look at this little exchange from early on in Act 1, Birling says there's too much at stake these days, everything to lose and nothing to gain by war. So this is him talking about how war will never happen. And bless little Eric, yes, I know, but still, you can see the nerves in his hesitation. And of course, Birling interrupts. Just let me finish, Eric. You've a lot to learn yet. Massively ironic, obviously, coming from Birling in this moment, as the audience knows full well that not just one war will occur, but two. But here we see an example of Eric trying to assert himself, but not quite managing it. He seems to be the butt of a lot of people's jokes. He just doesn't seem very happy in the environment that he's in. Another way of looking at Eric's character, early character, and throughout the play is that of a drunk. And some people think that's a really important representation here, that Eric in some way stands for that kind of overconsumption and greed of the upper classes, symbolized through excessive drinking. At first, it seems to be a little bit of a joke. Sheila refers to him as being squiffy because his behavior is a little bit irrational is not quite the right word, but sort of impulsive. You know, he suddenly laughs and for no seeming reason. It's a bit of an awkward moment. Sheila says you're squiffy, so it's like, oh ho ho ho, Eric's a little bit tiddly, but actually it is made very, very apparent through the rest of the play that it's not just a one-off occasion, that he is in fact drinking a lot, and everybody knows. Sheila knows, Gerald knows, the only person that doesn't is Mrs. Birling. But then what does she know about anything, let's be fair? Okay. Sheila says, this isn't the time to pretend that Eric isn't used to drink. He's been steadily drinking too much for the last 2 years. Now, this is vitally important, this idea about Eric's drinking. So again, you could look at that as a symptom of his deep unhappiness and resentment for being the underdog in his family. But you can also look at it as a kind of crutch. And it's his convenient way out in terms of not taking responsibility for his actions, but more of that to come. If we look at him positively, let's think about the idea of him being a positive symbol of change. Let's look at Eric's best bits. Best bits for Eric. Okay, right early on, before he has any idea of who we're talking about and his involvement. So this shows a bit of inherent goodness, yeah, a bit of good judgment. When he's talking about Eva Smith, he questions his father. Why shouldn't they try for higher wages? We try for the highest prices, and I don't see why she should have been sacked just because she'd a bit more spirit than the others. You said yourself she was a good worker. I'd have let her stay. Yay, Eric. Standing up for his father, showing that he understands that people deserve fairness. And I like this comparison. Why shouldn't they try for higher wages when we try for highest possible prices? So it's a real kind of understanding there of the injustice of their capitalist system, you know, so they will pay the lowest wages, but they will make as much money as they can. So that's some good understanding there. Excuse me. This is another moment, a shining moment for Eric. Which is actually sort of calling Birling out on his viewpoint that the inspector was trying to change. Do you remember what you said to Gerald and me after dinner when you were feeling so pleased with yourself? So note how much more assertive he is now. Okay, he might be drunk, but he's also assertive. You told us that a man has to make his own way, look after himself and mind his own business, etc., etc. Do you remember? Yes. And then one of those cranks walked in, the inspector. I didn't notice you told him that it's every man for himself. So high criticism of his father there. But again, he's getting down to the point of it. He's criticising Birling for having no social responsibility. So the suggestion could be from that he does have a sense of social responsibility. And finally, this is towards the end of the play, when there's discussions about whether or not the inspector is in fact real, and Birling is on one, yeah. So they're talking about the idea of a scandal. They just won't try to understand our position or see the difference between a lot of stuff like this coming out in a private and a downright public scandal. So note the dismissive way that Birling is talking about the situation. It's stuff, it's a scandal. Eric losing his temper, and I say, note the strength, you say, well, I say the girl's dead and we all helped to kill her, and that's what matters. So he sounds a lot like Sheila at the end here. So if we look at this in isolation, we go, yay, go Eric, symbol of change, you are the future, hurrah, 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 standing up to your parents. But we should probably talk a little bit about the darker side of Eric, because how can we talk about a character who refers to sexual assault in this way? I insisted, it seems. I'm not very clear about it, but afterwards she told me she didn't want me to go in, but that, well, I was in that state where a chap easily turns nasty, and I threatened to make a row. Now, note the ambiguity of this. I'm not very clear about it, but afterwards. After what, Eric? After what did she say that she didn't want you to come in? And then you were in that state, were you? That state? Are we meant to know what that state is? Are we meant to understand what that state is? He's talking about drunkenness. He's using his drunkenness as a way to excuse this. When a chap easily turns nasty. Check out the euphemism there. The suggestion is that he has forced himself upon her. He has raped her. But when he refers to that rape, he uses euphemistic language, so he doesn't have to say it. He excuses it on drunkenness, again, but without quite saying it. And he even refers to himself as a chap. You know that state that chaps get themselves into. Nice light-hearted, friendly tone there of that word. But notice again how it's distant. It's not when I easily turn nasty, it's a chap. That's the suggestion that all chaps do this. So he's not quite, he might be admitting to a degree, but he's not taking responsibility. And then again, that's when it happened. And I didn't even remember. That's the hellish thing. Now this is interesting. I didn't even remember. Past tense. Not I don't even remember. That suggests that he does remember now. So that suggests that he does have memory of the incident. So that's not great. There's also another moment where, again, Eric, unlike the other characters, has actually committed tangible crimes, you know, things that are against the law. Everyone else has committed moral crimes. You know, they have behaved in a way that is immoral and unforgiving. But Eric has actually broken the law in the potential rape of Eva Smith, but also in the theft from his father's business in order to provide for Eva, for him and Eva. But again, Eric, you stole money. Yes, he did. Not really. I intended to pay it back. Future intentions don't change the fact of the matter is that he stole from his father. He stole money. And again, he half admits it. He doesn't take responsibility. And again, look, I had to have some money. Not we had to have some money. I had to have some money. Okay, so yes, the money was for Eva Smith. Was it entirely for Eva Smith? I don't know. So how should we read Eric after all this? Should we read Eric as a symbol of hope? Should we read Eric as a young man who has done some dreadful things, but even in light of that dreadful behaviour, even someone that can steal from their family and rape vulnerable women can feel remorse and make changes? And if that's the case, then maybe he is a symbol for change and he's a glimmer of hope. Or, going back to what I was saying before, he's the symbol of pessimism. He's drunk, he's unreliable, and he's distanced from his own crime. If we can't trust what he says, because he uses euphemism and kind of shirks responsibility, can we trust his promises for the future? Can we trust that he is going to change his patterns of behaviour? When he shouts at his family at the end, that quote that I gave you before, does he mean it? Will he remember it the next day? Is this a really gloomy moment where we realise that actually young men in this situation, raised by the capitalist patriarchy, are doomed to make the same mistakes that their fathers made? Is that what Priestley wants us to think about Eric? Well, I'm going to leave that for you to decide. The great thing about writing an essay in English is that you can give both interpretations, and do you know what? Examiners love that stuff. So feel free to use both. Give me a shout in the comments if you want to share your ideas, or if you want to ask any questions, or if you want any different quotes. I am here. I will get back to you. So other than that, thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe if you found this video helpful, and there will be more like this on their way for you. Otherwise, happy revising.